Before the release of Michael Jackson's seventh studio album Bad in 1987, Jackson was considered one of the most prolific black pop music artists, maybe even the most prolific black artist of any medium of all time. His previous album, the iconic Thriller from 1982, was already certified platinum many times over, and as the decade progressed, fans were eagerly anticipating the next big thing, the follow-up of all follow-ups. And what they got was unlike anything they could have expected. The Bad album featured stellar hits like The Way You Make Me Feel, Dirty Diana, and the now infamous Bad, the music video for which was directed by a relatively young Martin Scorsese and starred a relatively unknown Wesley Snipes. But there's one specific track from the Bad album that I'd like to draw your attention to, and that song is Man in the Mirror. Although the song wasn't written by Jackson, its cohesiveness with the other tracks can't be understated. I think it's because the song is an almost perfect antithesis to the title track, Bad, that it works so well on the album. It provides a much needed balance, both in terms of style and message. The song is about reflection in the figurative and literal senses, as Jackson sings about seeing his reflection in a mirror. He reflects on his place in the world, racial strife in America, global poverty, and how he as an individual can and should change. For a simple pop tune, it makes an extremely powerful and uplifting statement, with layer upon layer of hidden meaning, and wisely, Jackson chose not to be featured in the official music video for the song. Rather than include the flashy choreography or costumes he'd become known for, the video simply showed footage from around the world. First, footage of poverty, war, protests, and famous leaders, and later, footage of camaraderie, celebrations, togetherness, and brotherly love. But geniuses are so rarely appreciated in their own time, and while Michael Jackson did enjoy plenty of commercial success, it would be many years before anyone would fully recognize his brilliance and realize what the King of Pop was actually trying to tell us with Man in the Mirror. For in his own words, "I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways, and no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself, then make a change."
You're fucking a white man!
As JFK famously said, "Time and the world do not stand still. Change is the law of life." The world is changing all around us at an accelerating rate, and I think this has awakened a strong impulse within my generation. A year or two ago, I might have called this impulse primal, but now I don't think that's what it is. There's something at work here beyond our understanding. It's a watershed moment. It's a changing of the guard. It's a divine vibe shift. This isn't something that we can see in the data, at least not yet, but I feel it in the air. If you know where to look, you can see it. I definitely have. In a whirlwind of social and technological change, young people are being drawn into separate camps. Some have embraced a pessimistic outlook, a sort of nihilism, self-medicated with degeneracy and distraction. The world has become frighteningly complex, and without any concrete reference point, they feel lost. These are what you might call the doomers. World War III is just around the corner. Let's go ahead and get it over with.
I'll never be able to get a decent job and buy a house, so why bother trying?
The boomers have destroyed everything. What's the point?
At least I have OF Girls, Reddit, and video games to keep me satisfied until my untimely death from
diabetes.
You probably know people like this. Maybe you are like this. Until very recently, I was well on my way to becoming a doomer myself. But can you really blame someone for feeling that way? When a man believes that the world is all that there is, and his worldly prospects are so few, what else can he do but despair? Unless the world is not all that there is. This simple idea that there is something greater than ourselves is the antidote to every modern malady. The dissatisfaction we feel is the direct result of our self-worship. Feeding our ego doesn't quite satisfy like it used to, because that way of life is hollow and leads to nowhere. This has always been the case. It just takes some people longer than others to realize it. But once they do, they seem to transform from doomer to bloomer.
Life is challenging, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Suffering will help us all grow in virtue.
Don't worry, King. Here are a dozen examples of people from history who have struggled with your same problem. You can learn their wisdom.
If God is for us, who can be against us? This is the group which has an optimistic outlook, an inspired vision of life beyond this one, united through prayer, sacraments, and a shared belief in something so much greater than themselves, and greater than any problems they may face. In my recent travels, I have encountered people whose lives and stories are similar to mine, and even from these brief interactions, I can tell that things are changing. The tide is turning. The bloomers are growing in numbers. Young people are beginning to believe again, and some, like me, have been given the chance to believe for the very first time. But why is this happening exactly? It's more than just a knee-jerk reaction to any political event or even any political movement. This isn't the Tea Party or the 2016 election we're talking about, and despite what many commentators might like to think, that the rise of what they call Christo-fascism in response to modern liberalism is somehow analogous to the rise of 20th century fascism in response to Bolshevism, the change I'm talking about is not directly political or even philosophical. It's purely religious in nature. I have a little theory that might help explain this. Prior to the 20th century, the church was the center of every American community, and rightly so. Regardless of denomination, this was almost exclusively the case. As the century progressed, however, corporate America gave rise to so many secular institutions which became new centers for communities. The soda shop, the bowling alley, the golf course, social clubs and bars, video stores, the gyms, the office, and of course, the greatest of all, the shopping mall. These corporate entities spread the consumerist culture around the world and made it possible for people to continue to enjoy the camaraderie, the festivities, the sense of belonging that churches previously provided, but without all that stuffy nonsense, you know, all those inconvenient rules and commandments, all those judgmental moralists, all that obedience, and all that personal sacrifice. Who needs that stuff anyway? But things have changed once again. Malls are almost extinct. Social media, AirPods, and women have ruined the social aspect of gyms. Everyone has their phone out everywhere they go. People work from home and are terminally online, watching hours of TV or YouTube every day. Ironic, I know. People hardly even go to restaurants anymore. They DoorDash. And as of mid-2024, only one Blockbuster Video remains in the town of Bend, Oregon. Essentially, the boomerist consumerists abandoned religion, failed to properly catechize their children, raised them in soulless subdivisions with other kids, wasted their potential in anti-Christian public schools, and embraced woke, ego-stroking, late-stage corporatism, which was actually, you guessed it, This has left the younger generations detached, atomized, depressed, anxious, and ill-prepared to exist in a transient world that is moving way too fast. But there is still plenty of hope. The horseshoe theory has once again proven to be an effective tool for understanding the evolution of culture. We started with an agrarian traditionalism, transitioned to industrialized post-war liberalism and progressivism. We saw the effects of that and descended into complete pessimism. But now, we're starting to reject modern philosophies and their consequences, and we're returning to tradition. If this trend continues, things are really going to change, for the better this time. A little less than a year ago, I stopped making videos as regularly. Not that I made them very regularly in the first place, but you know what I mean. I'd quit doing the podcast with my homeboy, I finished the projects I was particularly interested in, like the 1911 video and the one on storage units, and I was kind of in limbo. I didn't have much motivation, which is an easy predicament to find yourself in when it seems like your whole life is leading toward nothing. Go to work, go to the gym, go home to an empty, quiet apartment, consume media until bedtime, wash, rinse, repeat. The thought of doing that for 50 more years with nothing to show for it, and no legacy to leave behind, didn't sit well with me. And if you're a relatively sane person, that shouldn't sit well with you either. So I started doing a lot of thinking and even some praying, which was very difficult for me at first. I'd be kneeling down, giving it a decent try, but all I kept thinking was,
I don't believe in God. I believe in science.
Still, I kept at it. It was around this time that I remembered that old Sherlock Holmes quote, "When you have eliminated all which is impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth." In my short time on Earth, I've tried to live according to different philosophies and lifestyles, but none of them seem to be working. So, I thought, what if I try the one thing I haven't tried yet? However improbable, it must be the truth. And that's when I really decided to make a change. No more games, no more excuses. It was time to man up. So I held the selfies, and I put the gram away, and I redoubled my efforts to find God. And I did. But I won't lie to you, it was a difficult change. It still is, and it will probably continue to be. Change is hard for people like us. Broadly speaking, people who align themselves with the political right or even the religious right are naturally more inclined to cement their mode of thinking and maintain the status quo, hence the term conservative. We prefer to conserve the tried and true ideas, behaviors, and social and political norms which exist now or existed previously, rather than change them and risk messing things up. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't, some have said. But let's face it, guys, we haven't conserved shit. There's a reason the Republican Party has become known as Democrat Light, or Democrats going the speed limit. It's the same reason why the Methodist Church is basically in schism over the issue of gay marriage, or why the Lutheran Church now has a trans bishop. It's the same reason why the very real problems close to home are taking a back seat, while foreign conflicts and problems in the third world are given priority status. We've forgotten how to stand up for ourselves and our beliefs. We've wandered off the path, and we've seriously lost our passion for trying to fight our way back. Now that's a hard fact of life, but it's a fact of life that we're going to have to get realistic about if we want to change things. We're going to have to dig deep, but never forget that the outcome has already been decided. The doomer may dismiss this as a fairy tale, but we know how the story ends. Good triumphs over evil. Things will get worse before they get better, I can promise you that, but we will ultimately win. Despite my earlier joke, I don't actually think we all need to follow in Michael's footsteps and become white in order to improve the world. If people want to be Arab, Hispanic, or Black, or Asian instead of normal, that's okay. Godlessness is what really got us into this mess. I played a part in that. Maybe you did too. A lot of people did. We will all atone for that, and in doing so we will suffer. But rather than suffer meaninglessly, as the doomers do, we will suffer for a higher purpose. For our eternal salvation, for the betterment of the lives of our friends, family, and neighbors, and maybe even, God willing, the restoration of our culture and the improvement of our lives here on earth. We can only hope.